In this video, I will demonstrate how to hand sew a felt pouch. You will need a felt pouch pattern, felt, scissors, a needle threader and needle, thread, straight pins and a pin cushion, a sew-on snap, and a decorative button. Begin by cutting out the felt pouch pattern. You should cut along the solid line. Make sure you're cutting out your pattern using paper scissors. Next, we will thread our needle using two separate strands of thread. Start by inserting your needle threader through your needle and pull through, threading your needle with one strand of thread using a double strand method. Repeat using another strand of thread. Now I have a total of 2 strands of thread. Both of those strands using a double strand method will create 4 strands looped upon my needle. I'll clip the end, making sure that they are all even, and I'll knot all 4 strands of the thread. Now I'm going to pin down my pattern so that I can transfer my pattern onto my felt. Lining up the back edge of the pattern so that it is even with my felt, I'm going to pin my pattern onto the felt. Now that my pattern is pinned in place, I'll cut along the pattern's edge while also cutting my felt. My next step will be to fold my pattern along the fold line, and I'll use a pin to mark where my fold will be in the felt. One more time. using the pins to mark my fold line. And now I'll remove my final pins and remove my pattern from the felt. Next, I will fold my felt up to the first fold line that's marked with my pins. Now I can remove my pins that I put in place and pin my fold down. Now I will begin stitching my blanket stitch, starting at the flap. I'm going to insert my thread through the top layer of felt, making sure that my knot is secure between the two layers of felt. I'll make my loop, hold down with my finger, move this pin because he's in the way, coming over about a ½ inch, I'll start my blanket stitch. And I will stitch along the edge of the felt all the way around, maintaining an even blanket stitch. Now that I'm approaching a corner, I want to remind you of what to do on the edge as we're going through our going over or around the perimeter of our pouch. Once you create your last stitch for the row, to turn the corner, you'll enter back in at the same point that you started, but coming along the side in a diagonal. Entering again in the same point, but coming along the next edge. And now I'm ready to continue my blanket stitch along the edge, the next edge of my pouch. Now that I've made it all the way around my felt pouch, I'm going to finish by joining my last stitch with my first by coming underneath the threads, pulling it so that they kind of come together. And now I'm going to tie my knot by forming a small stitch at the top of the felt where my stitches meet. As I pull, I'll take my needle through the loop and it will create a knot. One more time through that same spot, pull, I'll take my needle through and I'll bring my needle back through the felt so that my tail comes inside the pouch, and then I'll clip. Now that I've made it all the way around my pouch, my next step is to sew the blanket stitch along this top layer. To start, I'm going to enter over here where I made one of my last stitches, making sure that my thread stays tucked between the two layers of felt. I'm going to actually come across as if I was working on a corner piece to this overlapping area. And from here, I will begin my blanket stitch, making one more stitch in that same spot, but coming up along the top layer, corner. So I'm ready to begin sewing across the side. This top edge. And I'll continue working my blanket stitch all the way across the top layer. Now that I've sewn all the way across the top layer, I'm going to take my needle back through and out, pulling a little tight, clipping my tail so that it's right inside. So I've used the blanket stitch to sew all the way around my pouch, Next step is just some finishing touches. My next step is going to be to sew on my snap. I will fold my flap over, and using a straight pin I will mark where I want my snap to go. Folding it back using a marking pencil, I'll mark where my pin is on both sides of the felt. Now I'll remove the pin. And let's see, I think I want to double check this just to make sure. Yes. Okay, so now using my pen to anchor my snap, I'll come through the center. Have to go inside the pouch and come up through where my marking is. Now that that's anchored in place, I'm going to sew on my snap, and I'll be using a thread color that matches my felt as best as possible. Now that my snaps are in place, my last step is to sew on my decorative button. So I've already put in my anchor stitch. Now I will stitch my button in place. Now my felt pouch is complete.